Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 2. It's called Who Mourns for Adonais. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. So we started with a good episode, nice strong out the gate.
Yeah.
And then we came plummeting into Episode 2.
Yeah.
With a right, maybe stinker's harsh, but...
I think it got to the point where they were like, oh, it's a godlike being. I was like, oh, God already.
Yeah, another one. Yeah, didn't take long to get one.
I will give it props in the sense that they were like, really, another one? You know, this ain't a god. We've seen this all before.
This is true, and at least it ended with them kind of taking away, even though they never really explain it that well. It's just kind of like, oh, his power comes from this thing, and then they destroy it, and then that's it. And,
Yeah.
And that, like, I mean, I like the final point, because when they defeat the god, because the whole thing is that Apollo, who's in the episode, wants them to worship him, because the gods need to be worshipped, and whatnot. And all the other gods have kind of passed on to whatever gods go. I mean, they're still immortal, but they kind of, you know, it's not the same as us dying, but it kind of, you know, they vanquish into eternity or whatever.
Yeah.
Kirk basically says, well, yeah, but we outgrew you. We have no need for you anymore. I actually kind of like that point. I thought that was a nice, poignant little statement to make. We've outgrown the need to worship, you know, gods. Which is also very ballsy for a 60s TV show. And admittedly, they get around it slightly because they're specifically talking about, you know, these ancient Greek gods. As
But
opposed,
the point is still there, because,
Yeah.
I mean, when has Star Trek ever actually mentioned religion?
They haven't. You just kind of assume it's not a thing.
Right, that it's nothing. And like I say, it is ballsy because, you know, that's a bold thing to say even today in America.
I think that's how they get around it. Is that, like, Roddenberry wanted it to be, you know, without religion. So instead of mentioning it and saying they don't have religion, they just never talk about it and never have it and never say anything about it. This is, of course, the first time that it's really come up. But they've kind of skirted around it by never mentioning, you know, what modern people talk about in terms of God and Christianity. It's just, the Greek gods, like, they talk about those, but the sentiment's clearly there. Like,
Yeah,
you get it. Like, it's there. So I like that, right? That is my one positive statement about the episode. That's about it.
Okay, that's strong.
That's about it. I didn't like this so much. I mean, I like the initial image of this hand, this giant hand that comes out in space.
Yeah,
next to this
when
planet.
it comes onto the screen, I was like, oh, are we getting one of these episodes?
Oh yeah, mysterious object in front of the Enterprise. They have to figure out what it is. I love those. And then it became godlike being.
Yeah.
I can do what I want. I've got power to do anything. It was. Do you know what the moment it was that I just lost interest completely? It was when they refuse to do what he wants, and he just starts to do something to the ship. Like, the pressure on the ship just starts to, like,
Yeah.
you know, go down or whatever. And it's like, okay, right, I can just do whatever he wants. All right, well, been there, done that.
Pretty much.
Multiple times at this point.
I enjoyed Chekov because obviously this was his first experience with a godlike being.
True. Yeah, he even has a line where he's like, "Oh, I've never encountered a god before," and I think Kirk says something like, "Oh, you still probably haven't."
Yeah.
But I almost read that as differently as, like, he's saying, "Yeah, we've already done this like 5 times. It's not, you get used to it, Chekov."
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, they've still not mentioned that he's new, but at least his exchanges in this episode felt like he was new. Like, they never actually said he's new.
Right, but they definitely imply he's new to going to the ground on these sorts of missions, at the very least.
Yeah, because McCoy has that line about Spock's infecting that boy Jim.
Yeah.
And the fact that they mention he's only 22 or something like that, like, it also implies
Yeah,
that
he was
he's
young.
new. Yeah. So, yeah.
So that's another thing. I don't think we mentioned it last week, but I think it was a really ballsy move to put a Russian on the crew. You know, like, again, it's this idea that, you know, we moved past all this, but 60s, that was, you know, space race was just getting started, all that stuff. It was.
I mean, this was, only 6-7 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis? Like, you know, like...
Right.
My point being that we're right deep in the middle of the Cold War. Like, we're not...
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not close to the end of it by any means. We're still deep in it at this point.
Right, exactly. Like, tensions were high.
But I think that makes it all the more poignant. Like, I'm almost curious as to what were people saying when they saw a Russian on Star Trek and...
Right, because obviously the
1967.
point is saying, no, we've moved past this. Those petty squabbles, they don't mean anything. Like he still has his culture. I think in this, you know, there's a good few references to his Russian heritage and stuff in this episode. And it's the idea that, no, he's still Russian. Like, they're not hiding from that, but that's not a problem anymore. That they're
Yeah,
friend, they're all friends together.
yeah. I think it's good. I suppose I'll praise that. I mean, that's not really praising this episode as much as
It's
it's
not.
just
We probably should have mentioned it last episode, really,
yeah,
with his introduction. But
yeah.
we had enough other good stuff to
But
talk about last episode.
But I think that's why you noticed it in this one is because they actually reference his heritage a little bit. Because I think at one point it says something, and then Kirk says no, in English myth it's this.
Yeah.
He sort of says no, that's the Russian version. This is the English version. So they point it out in this one, so it's more noticeable. Because even though he's got the accent, it never really came up in the last episode. It wasn't
Right.
you know. If you're just not paying attention to the accent, you wouldn't even.
I think that's it. Like now, we don't even think about it because, sure, but
Yeah, why not have a Russian on the crew?
You got to take a minute to remember that. That was probably a big deal.
Probably was. I don't think that's fair. So what is this episode? Beyond what we've said in the ultimate meaning, it's so they're standing in this little set they've built that's got a couple of benches and this sort of throne. These columns, little stage where Apollo sits, and our characters, at least the ones on the planet, sit around here, and occasionally Apollo shows up, shows how powerful he is, then disappears. He shows up, and Kirk and one of the others, usually Scotty, because he's got a crush on the random female crew member that we've never seen before, and he's trying to defend her because Apollo takes a liking to her, and someone will try and attack him or basically just not go along with them, and he'll zap them, he'll disappear.
I like the sound effect. When he like backhands Scotty.
Sure.
and it has a nice big thunderclap sound effect.
The point I'm getting at, though, is that the episode is very repetitive. I felt like it was just
very boring, isn't it?
Apollo kept coming back to this one location, this one set that they built, and I groaned when because obviously Spock's up in the ship, he's been told to stay up there, because maybe that's an interesting point, is that Apollo's racist towards Vulcans. Maybe that's a little bit interesting because he says don't bring him with the pointy ears.
Yeah,
maybe that's a little bit interesting. Like maybe that's part of why it's outdated. Like that's why we don't worship you anymore, because it celebrates that idea where we're past that again.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some good, well intentioned. Certainly, I'm not going to dispute the intentions of the episode, but as a piece of structured filmmaking and entertainment and pacing and just interesting in terms of what's actually happening throughout most of it, it's quite dull because Spock's up in the ship and he's with Uhura and whoever else is still up there, and Sulu's still up there, and they're trying to because basically Apollo's blocking all their communications, he's blocking their shields and everything else. They're just, in fact, the hand is literally just sort of holding them in place.
Yeah.
And occasionally we cut up back there, and it's basically Uhura, like she's tinkering with like motherboards and stuff, and and
Spock's going, "Can't you do any quicker?" And she's like, "No, I don't know what I'm doing."
That's basically all it is. Like he goes up to Sulu, "Are you still scanning? Still scanning? Not found anything yet? Okay, keep scanning." And that's basically all that happens up there. I did laugh though because maybe I'm wrong, but all those like motherboards and shit, like all those chipsets that Uhura was messing around with, they look really fake to me. And I don't know if it's maybe just that in the 60s they looked a little bit different because they were clunkier, bigger, but it looked like someone had just made them.
No, I know what you mean.
Like they just got little bits and stuck them to a board and painted them and made it rather than looking like an actual motherboard.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they just look really fake to me, but no, that's a big deal. But again, that's kind of weird because I think when this aired, most people had probably never seen what that looked like.
They're very true.
Think about it. Like people know what a motherboard or anything like that looks like now, but like back then, like.
No, you're right. Unfortunately, I think there's probably still too many people now who couldn't tell you what a motherboard looks like.
Yeah, I mean, filthy casuals. What we could do about it.
That's it.
I am kidding, of course. It's okay if you don't know what a motherboard looks like. That said, if you're the sort of person who panics when they minimize something and don't know how to get it back, then get some lessons, all right?
Also, you have Google at your disposal. Go look at what a motherboard looks like.
True. Actually, that's one of my pet peeves is when people will ask you something they could find out in a Google in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, if it's something like really simple.
Yeah, like. Yeah, because whenever, like, I hate to, rag on the mother, but, typically it's the parents, usually, who ask you stupid questions and don't understand these things, right? Whenever, like, she's like, oh, but you grew up with computers, and I'm like, well, to a certain point, but no one taught me how to do any of this. I just looked things up. If there was something I needed to do on the computer that I didn't know, I Googled it, and I got instructions, and I learned.
This is what I don't get. Google is like one of the greatest resources of our age.
I'm
Just use it.
self-taught. It's completely self-taught. No one taught me anything.
All you have to do is read. Well, as long as you've been taught to read, of course, that tends to help.
I'm fairly certain my mother can read. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying you weren't self-taught to read.
Oh,
You were
sure.
you were
Yeah.
taught
Okay.
to read, and
Sure.
then
Yes.
you taught yourself more.
I'm not expecting anyone to be self-taught to read, though.
You never know.
So it's a fair fundamental. I mean, if nothing else, you should at least be taught in life how to read, write, and maybe do some basic math. Right? That's the fundamentals of living that you need.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Right? As the fundamentals. You can tell we don't have that much interesting things to say about this episode because we're off on all sorts of weird
Yeah.
tangents.
This was also one of those ones that showed how it can be as forward thing as Star Trek is. It has these occasionally dated moments with the female crew member at the start.
Yeah.
And it basically boiled down to, yeah, but she's a woman. She's going to go join a family and leave the service.
Yeah. Oh, it did lead to that slightly funny joke with Kirk's like, "Oh, Bones, I wouldn't just call it losing a crew member. I'd call it, wait a minute, I'm losing a crew member." Like that was a funny little line.
Yeah, it was, but it was one of those moments that just felt dated again. Like the
It did.
expectation on the woman is that she's fine now, but at some point she's going to leave to go and be a family.
Yeah. I mean, you could read that scene a little bit more into, like, maybe McCoy isn't saying it because she's a woman, but it's just that it's because she's the type of person he expects it from, more than just because.
I think you're being generous.
Maybe I am, but it was the way he said it. It was more like. Because Scotty was interested in her, right, and Bones recognised that. And the way he spoke, it was kind of like he just knew that she was the type of person to who this wasn't the life for her. Like, eventually she would go and do these other
maybe.
things.
Maybe.
Because it's not like he says, oh, they shouldn't expect to be with anyone. It was more specifically, no, she's the type of person who, this isn't the life for her. Whereas, because we saw in season 1 that, two crewmates were going to get married, so it's not unheard of that
No, it's true.
a couple would be on the ship together working, so it's the thing. It happens.
It is. I don't know. It didn't feel like that to me when I was watching it.
If anything, my datedness of it would be more of directed at the fact that Apollo puts her in like this, dress like quite quickly. It's like, oh, you're pretty. Here's a dress with
I at
more
least
skin.
see. At least that one was the point. Was that's what he was used to in ancient Greece. That was the point, I think, because he even said, Artemis's bow arm is uncovered, so you're going to be like that. Like that was. I get, we're looking at this going, yeah, it's just an excuse to have it, but at least they wrote it into the script for once.
That doesn't get them out of jail though. Come on now, they get to write whatever they want. They could have easily just not wrote the part where he says, "Oh, I want you to look like I'm used to."
Yeah, you could, but again,
because let me ask you this: does it affect anything else in the rest of this episode if she's not in that dress?
No,
a single thing.
I'm just trying to think through logic because obviously his whole thing is he's into her and he's like, no, I want you to basically like you're gonna restart my race.
Right. Okay. Yes.
And so he's like, he's like, no, I want you being as good as you can be, kind of thing. I think from his perspective. So I think it plays into his ego.
Okay. I mean, okay. If I'm going to defend this a little bit, that whole bit at the start where he's like, oh, she's the sort of woman who'll abandon this life and go and be married. That does kind of play into later on in the episode when they've lost all hope, and the only way they're going to, because they find that they have to like get him angry to drain his energy. Basically, Kirk asks her like, you have to piss him off. You have to resist him.
Yeah.
Because you're the only one who can. And she doesn't really want to. She's actually kind of infatuated with him. But he sort of like lays down like, no, this is your duty. You're an officer, and this is what you need to. This is an order. Like this is part of your duty. And she ultimately makes that choice, maybe showing that unlike what Bones was saying at the start, maybe she is willing to sort of commit to this life. So maybe there is something in there. I don't think it's done well enough that where I'm like, oh, that was a big moment for her where she proved him wrong.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? It feels like the ideas are there, but they're not really coming through.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just down to it being a really dull episode. So by the time you're getting
Yes.
to these points, you kind of just checked out
Like I
anyway.
was saying, I groan. See when like they're up in the ship and they discover, oh, it's that thing he's been sitting on the whole time. That's the source of his power. I was like, oh, that's convenient. It's the one set we've got for the planet is where the thing
Yeah,
is.
yeah, pretty much.
There was me thinking, oh, that's when they'll finally get to a new place. Because other than that, we just see like them standing in like around some fake trees and plants.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they're behind a bush. Basically, is the gist of it.
pretty much.
So, ultimately, that's the biggest problem I have. Obviously, we've had these godlike characters too many times before. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that the episode is all just kind of like, again, it's repetition in the one location of the same things kind of happening over and over again. There's some nice ideas, some well-intentioned stuff in there, but ultimately it doesn't amount to much entertainment, and as a result, I was kind of bored.
Yeah,
For a
me
lot
too.
of it.
Like I say, it has ideas, but never develops them. And instead of developing, it just does the same thing over and over.
Yeah. And on top of it, like these godlike things, like the more I see, because they keep doing different spins. Because we had that one Squire of Gothos, where it was the one who was like obsessed with, was it 17th century or whatever it was?
Yeah, like Napoleon and
Yeah.
all that, wasn't it?
And then like here, it's Apollo, it's Greek gods, and I'm like, you're kind of just dressing up in something different, and it's almost more annoying because I'm like, all right, instead of just having the godlike figure, he's talking like Apollo, and he's talking about myths, and he's name dropping all these other gods, and I'm like, you're not really doing anything with it. Just stop it.
Yeah.
So it's all just dressing for the.
I think we
plot.
should count how many of these we get this season.
Oh, that's one.
Yep. One down. We got 20-something episodes left.
Yeah. So we're at a 50-50 success rate so far for season 2.
It's a rough start.
It's not that rough.
I mean, 50-50 is pretty low. Like that's not where you want to be. If
Yeah,
it
but-
ended at 50-50, we go, shit, that's a lot of gods.
No, I don't mean for. I just mean for weak episodes, not gods. Obviously, yeah. If we get to the end of the season and half the episodes are literally these godlike figures, yeah, I'll complain. But I mean,
Yeah.
if we get to the end of a season here and it's like 50-50 in terms of 50% good, 50% not that good, I'll be kind of okay with that. Like that's an okay ratio.
Yeah, yeah. It's not bad.
More the better, of course. But if that's what
It's like it's I suppose that's the minimum acceptable. 50-50, isn't it? Because if you've got more bad than good,
Which, to be fair, I'm not worried about the season at this point.
no, me either.
It's just unfortunate that one of the early episodes is one that we did not connect with and found quite tedious to get through. So,
Yeah.
but there you go. So that is Who Mourns for Adonis. Actually, one final point. I thought this ended really abruptly. Because how typically whenever they end something down on the planet, it usually cuts back up to the bridge and like there'll be a little sort of just epilogue scene with them talking about it on the bridge.
Usually making a joke at Spock's expense.
Usually making a joke at Spock's expense, and then it'll cut to that's when the credit will come up, created by Gene Roddenberry or whatever. And here it just cut to the exterior shot of the ship like it was going to do that, and the credit just came up, and I went, oh, okay. Right,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So it's not a big deal, but it caught me off guard.
Could have easily slashed 2 minutes from pretty much anywhere else in this episode to have given us this scene at the end.
Yep. But there you go. So that is Who Mourns for Adonis. Let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. You get these episodes a week early if you do. That's one of the perks. That's the $1 tier. But there's more rewards at like $5 as well. There's a lot of stuff in there. But certainly at the $1 tier, you get these a week early. So that is us. So thank you once again for watching. Keep watching TV. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.